For this application, I again have a brand new application, which is pretty empty, which you find attached, this main Dart file, that's what you find attached. You can simply drag and drop this into a brand new Flutter project. I haven't set up anything here, and this main Dart file is pretty lean. It only has the My App stateless widget and the My Homepage stateless widget, which just shows some centered text here. Now, this is our starting point. And of course, there are many places where we could start in this app. We could start with the feature of adding products so that users can add new products. That would make sense because without products, there's little we can display. However, I will start with the product overview screen instead and simply start with some dummy products, and then later we'll replace that with products that we actually added ourselves with the add a new product screen in the app. Now, what we'll definitely need is a couple of different screens and also normal widgets, and therefore I will already create a screens subfolder and a widgets subfolder here. And that's simply something we did before in an earlier module. It allows us to keep our files more organized and understand what's inside our files. Now, in the screens folder here, we can add a new file to hold a new widget, and that should be the products underscore overview underscore screen.dart file. Because in there, I want to create a products overview widget, which is the widget that should present that grid of products we have in our application. And that's simply my choice here to start with this widget, because I think that's one of the easiest ways of getting something useful onto the screen, which then soon also allows us to dive into state management. For the moment, let's start with a stateless widget in there, create a new stateless widget, which I'll name Products Overview Screen. And as before, of course, we need to import Material Dart from the Flutter package here to unlock stateless widget, build context widget, container, all these types and classes. Now, in the Products Overview screen, I want to render a grid of products. And therefore, we need two things. We need products and we need the grid. Now, a product in this application will be, of course, an important model, an important thing. And therefore, I'll create a new folder, models, and in there, I want to have a product.dart file to define how a product should look like in this application so that we can build products based on this definition, which simply helps us, then use this product in a uniform way throughout our application. So in there, we can define a product class, and it's, again, a normal class, not a widget. It's just a class, because I just want to use this as a blueprint to create objects based on. And how could a product look like? Now, of course, you are free to structure and model this in whichever way you want it. But for this application, a product definitely should have an ID. And I'll mark this as final for now, because I expect to get that ID when the product is created. Later down in the course, for example, we'll get that ID because we'll create a product on a server, and then we'll store that server-side generated product here in our application. So we'll have that ID when we create the product. We also probably will have a title, and I think a description also makes sense on a product. And other than that, probably also a price, right? Which should be of type double to allow for decimal places too. And also an image URL. Again, here I'll have an image which is stored on a server, which we then display in the application. We don't store it as an asset that's baked into our application bundle, because if we would do that, then we would have to ship a new app version with every new product that was added. And that is, of course, not feasible at all. So we'll have a network image here. And there's one last field which I want to have, and that's a Boolean is favorite. And this is not final, because this actually will be changeable after the product has been created. And it allows us to track whether the user of this application has this product as a favorite product or not. And later we'll still be able to save different favorite statuses for different users of our app. But that's simply something we'll worry about later. For now, we just have this changeable, this mutable Boolean property here is favorite in this app. Now we need a constructor to initialize a product. So let's repeat the class name here to add such a constructor. And as always, it's up to you whether you want to use named or positional arguments. Since we have a couple of arguments here, I think it's easier to work with this class if we use named arguments. So I'll use curly braces here around my argument list to add these arguments as named arguments. And then I want to be able to set the ID. I want to be able to set the title, the description, the price, and the image URL, and of course also is favorite. Now there are a couple of fields, a couple of properties which I want to mark as required so that we can't create a product without them. And for that we can use the required decorator, which we can import from the Flutter package, and there the foundation.dart file. With this import added at the top here, we can add required in front of the ID, because that ID will be required, in front of the title, in front of the description, the price, and the image URL, but isFavorite is not necessarily required. We can simply initialize that with a default value of false by assigning a default value here. With that, the product class is finished. Looks quite good to me. And with it, we can move back to the Products Overview widget to start our work on the Products Overview grid.